lake that sits behind it. That was put in the 1970s after the Sylmar earthquake as basically a back support system for the dam. The dam used to have an open face on the backside. It's close to 200 feet tall, so it's very tall. They came across major failures in the dam. They wanted the homeowners to drain almost 100 feet of water out of the lake. They wanted them to do a $7 million retrofit to the dam. Well, they hired an engineer who said, why don't we just flood the backside? We'll put a secondary body of water, we'll put back pressure on the dam. So that's what they did. They flooded the zone behind it to create Papoose Lake. This is the only public use dock on the lake right here. So if you want to fish Lake Arrowhead, you're not like a homeowner or resident. You can't make friends with a homeowner, because that's really all it takes. You can fish over here at Peninsula Park. This originally was called Tombstone Park. All these blocks that make this jetty are tombstone, headstone, gravestone, end cuttings. So they recycled the end cuttings off of tombstones, headstones, and gravestones for about 4 years. They brought them out here and they built this jetty out of end cuttings off of headstones. So yeah, they put the public dock in a very friendly, inviting place called Tombstone Park. That's how it operated for like 8 years. Eventually they changed the name to Peninsula Park. Nobody wanted to bring their kids to Tombstone Park, so now it's called, if you look it up on a map, it's called Peninsula Park, but it's kind of a neat area to check out. So we're going to go back into Winter Harbor and then through Shelter Cove. There's kind of a lot of information on the lake till we get out of this area. Once we head back into North Bay, I'll overload you guys the whole entire way around. But Winter Harbor is a really neat area back here. This is where Walter O'Malley's home was built, up on the hillside, that big green lawn. He was the original owner of the Dodgers. He moved the Dodgers out west in 1957. In 1958, he bought 8 acres back here. He loved it back here. He bought almost the entire Winter Harbor. He built this 12,000 square foot house up on the hillside that you'll see. We'll go back in there and take a look at it. It's one of the most unique kind of original houses on the lake. It's got a lot of historic value. He built a few guest bungalows on the property. He built one specifically for Marilyn Monroe. He built a couple really neat bungalows on the property. So he lived up here full-time for 17 years. He loved it up here. He would commute down to the Dodger games to Chavez Ravine. He'd come right back to his lake house where he lived full-time for close to 20 years. He had a lot of big events and big parties there. So he sold the Dodgers in 1979. The O'Malley family sold this house in the early 80s in 1982. The current owner who purchased it from Mr. O'Malley, they put it on the market 7 months ago. If anybody wants to buy it, it's for sale. They want $14.9 million for this house. It sits on 3.2 acres, but it's the most expensive home for sale on the lake right now. Pretty amazing. If you can find it in the resort home guide books or some of the magazines or even online, it's unbelievable the work they did in that home. There's a grandchildren's room upstairs. It's got 10 suspended sailboats hanging from the ceiling with all their names on the back. It's amazing the work they did in there. It's crazy. I would suggest finding that place in the real estate book and looking for it. This is Glenn Keane's home that sits on the point here. So he's the main Disney animator. He does all your major Disney movies. He drew Ariel from The Little Mermaid after his wife. He recently did iBasketball with Kobe Bryant, just did the new Aladdin movie. Every major Disney animated movie's been done by Glenn Keane. Now it's on Max Keane. Kind of taking over a lot of the animation with Disney, but that's a really amazing house. They're in Shelter Cove over here, so they're at the beginning of this private gated area. Glenn Keane is not going to have a bunch of neighbors. You're going to notice like one boat dock for each property back through this area. So if you live back here, you need to own property to have a boat dock back here. You can't just buy a boat dock back here. The water tower that sits out in the middle of the lake, that's the reason the lake was put in, was to send this water through 60 miles of this tunnel system down to the Inland Empire for the orange groves. So the original plan was to hold as much water as they could here in Lake Arrowhead, which was originally called Little Bear Lake. And they wanted to hook Little Bear Lake up through this tunnel system to Lake Gregory, then down to Silverwood, then over to the IE. So the tunnel's 240 feet tall, it goes to the bottom of the lake. One tunnel exits Winter Harbor, kind of back by O'Malley's house. The other one exits Shelter Cove, right over here to the, kind of right between the trees. There's some railing, and there's back behind that, there's a doorway to elevator shaft. Still to this day, you can take the elevator ride 195 feet down below the lake bottom and make your way out to the main tower. The tunnels are still intact. That's our emergency drain for the lake if we were to have some catastrophic failure with the dam. That's how they would drain the lake. The original lake owners were sued by the ranchers in the high desert back in the early 1900s for diverting the natural watershed away from the high desert. When they built this dam, the ranchers in the high desert didn't receive their watershed. They sued the original lake owners. They won the lawsuit, and this tunnel system got capped off 6 miles in. So it was never actually used. It stubs out of Lake Arrowhead, and that's the end of the tunnel system. So this area, Shelter Cove, The house that sits on the point over here, they call it the Darth Vader house. You'll see why when we get to the front of it. This glass circular room on the end of the house here, that's their master bathroom shower, which is really weird. You can see the shower heads in there. It's strange. So that hooks up to a 3,000 square foot master bedroom bathroom in this home. The house is enormous. So this is Walter and Carol Probst's home. Carol Probst trained Michelle Kwan. She owned the Ice Castle facility over in Blue Jay. She trained quite a few Olympic athletes. Michelle Kwan was her most notorious athlete. Walter Probst was a copper baron. Some of their best friends were Ronald Nancy Reagan. President Ford stayed here numerous times. Different high-ranking officials and diplomatic officials would stay with Walter Probst so often that he decided to build this house hand-in-hand with the Secret Service. He did not want the Secret Service patrolling the exterior grounds of the property every time somebody of importance was up. So he hired an engineer and an architect that were appointed through the Secret Service, and they built the whole entire house accordingly. They used 100% bulletproof glass. They structurally reinforced every facet of this home. It's like a bomb shelter on the hillside here. Carol Probst, her original plan was to train from the home, so that the original blueprints consist of a 9,000 square foot underground training facility with a regulation size ice rink. That's what she wanted under the house. She wanted to train from the home. So Walter, before he built the home, he obviously took the plans into the city, and they denied him. They denied him year after year. He thought money would talk and he'd be able to get his ice rink in. They told him the energy consumption wasn't feasible. At the time in the early 80s, they did not want the ice rink going under the house. So he gave up, I'd say 6.5, 7 years in. He built the house without the ice rink. He bought Carol the Ice Castle facility in Blue Jay. They renovated that. She trained out of that the remainder of her training career. But that house is a pretty strange one over there. So where this big swan is right here with the crown, those guys have a funicular, so they're not going to hike any stairs. They ride a tram car from their house to their boat dock. So they hop in a little tram car and you push a button and you ride it up and down. They don't even own stairs. Most houses put in both. These guys just put in a funicular. So yeah, no need to walk if you live over here.
Yeah, really.
This big giant brown house up here on the right hand side with the outdoor rock fireplace, that's Max Factor's home of Max Factor Cosmetics. So he's the owner, inventor of Revlon, Maybelline. A lot of the major cosmetic brands were developed by Max Factor. He's got a really amazing house that sits over here. This area is called Eagle Point. He's got the largest funicular on the lake, so that center rail holds about 14 people. They all ride together. So nobody has to wait behind at the Factor house here. They all ride at once. Yeah, that's a really big one. And then the White House up here on the right, this one's really neat too. This one was purchased by, I'd say they're in their mid-40s now. They won the Super Lotto. So that's what a buck can get you. I guess apparently from what I've heard though, 11 years ago the wife bought a quick pick on her way home from work. She won $72 million in the Super Lotto. So her husband looks really appreciative. He's always out there smiling. I see him carry all the bags and he looks like he treats her really well. So they disconnected their funicular on the left side, that small one. They make their kids walk the trail. Yeah, so they're the only ones complaining at that house. So that's really the last house in the private gated area. Then you're going to see this dirt trail up on the hillside, which ends at that White House. That's the North Bay Trail. So that trail is going to wrap 2.5 miles in to North Bay. So that's going to be probably the longest lake trail. So that's the North Bay Trail. So every boat dock from here forward as you go into North Bay, these docks can be owned by people that live off the waterfront. So you can live off the lakefront. You can be, like I said, maybe 2 miles off the lake.